All right, I'm just going to say good morning because I'm sure, hopefully we're live. How are you, Robert?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing, Carla?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself so I can share this to my page and stuff, and then we will carry on from there. So go
Awesome.
ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Robert Naini with Spray Foam Advisor. I've been in the spray foam insulation industry now since 2004 and started Spray Foam Advisor, which is a training and education web page, a website where you can create a free user account, get access to training and education materials on spray foam insulation. My expertise is really in building science and building codes, but I also have an MBA, and we'll talk a little bit about my background in education, how I got started in the industry in a little bit. But because I have that MBA, I have a unique perspective to help spray foam contractors on all aspects of the business, ranging from building codes, building science, to sales and marketing, to how they run their businesses, to business management, financial management, just all aspects of the business. And that's really the focus of what I do at Spray Foam Advisor.
Right. So we tried to do this a few months back, and then whatever, life got in the way. So I was glad that you reached back out to me because it got crazy and whatever, as we all know, but I'm really glad you're on. I think this is a good opportunity for people to get to know who you are outside of, what you do and what you do for the industry and stuff. So I'm excited to venture into who Robert Naini is. And maybe you can give a little bit of tell us how you got involved in the spray foam industry, what brought you into the industry.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite stories related to the industry because I had no idea what spray foam insulation was. So, in I got an undergrad in mechanical engineering and a master's in business. And this was 2002 is when I got my undergrad in mechanical engineering. 2004, I got my master's in business. And I was graduating with my MBA from the University of Texas in Arlington. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I kind of just knew that I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't want to be an engineer guy sitting behind a desk designing gears and motors for the rest of my life. That just did not excite me. And that's why I got my MBA to begin with, was because I wanted to kind of expand that business knowledge, that business aspect of my knowledge base. So I finished that, and I'm searching for jobs, and I put out, resumes, and I'm going on interviews, and I get a call from this small little company. And I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was actually at a movie, about to walk into a movie with one of my buddies. And I get this call, and she says, "Hey, I'm an executive assistant at this company. We'd like to bring you in for an interview Monday morning. Can you come in at 10 o'clock?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." At this point in my life, I don't have a full-time job. I'm not doing anything really. And I'm only interviewing. Like, that's what life was for me, was interviewing for jobs. And I remember getting off the phone, and I'm like, man, this company that starts with a D, the only company I remember that I applied to that started with a D was actually named Dantech. And so it was this little company named Demilec that called me in 2004. And
interesting.
And I had no idea who they were. The only company that I applied to that started with the D was this company named Dantech, and I just assumed it was that company because they both started with a D. And I was like, this company Dantech is like, they're 2 hours away from my apartment. I'm gonna have to get up super early and drive through Dallas traffic to go from Arlington to the east side of Dallas. Dantech was a solar turbine company, and I was like, I don't know anything about solar turbines. I have no idea what I'm walking into. And this is what I'm thinking during the entire movie, and on my drive back home. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, well, I better go research this company.
Yeah.
And I get home and I start researching and I can't find anything. I'm like, well, it's not the company I thought it was. This company's located only like 10 minutes from my apartment. They're in Arlington, Texas, like 10 minutes away from me. But I
Where
have
am I
no
going?
idea. Yeah, yeah. I have no idea how they got my resume. I don't remember applying to this company. Like, I have no idea what's going on. And so I'm freaking out. I'm like, who are these people? How'd they find out about me? And so I'm like going crazy all Friday night on the, I mean, this is 2004. So the internet, is not great at this point in time. And there weren't a lot of videos. So I didn't have access to a lot of information. And I couldn't find anything on Friday. So I wake up Saturday and I'm looking for more. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. And so I decided I'm just going to start calling people. Hey, have you heard of this company? Hey, have you heard of this company? And I call my dad and say, hey, I got this interview Monday morning with a company named Demilec right here in Arlington. Have you heard of this company? And he says, oh, yeah, that's the company I work for. And so my dad didn't tell me, and he just gave my resume to the boss.
Oh,
and
funny.
I found out later after the fact.
Yeah.
So my dad had only been there for 2 months. And so this is why I didn't know that he worked there, because he had just started this job in the customer service department. And he overheard Dave Law, the boss at the time, the part owner, CEO of USA at the time, say that he was looking for engineers. And that was it. Wow. And so my dad just kind of dropped my resume on his desk and said, my son just graduated with his MBA, but he also has an engineering degree. Here's his resume. And so that's how they found out about me.
Wow.
I go in for an interview, and it was, at this point, I had probably been on a dozen interviews, probably more, maybe 18 interviews after I graduated with my MBA. And this was an interview like no other. Like, I go in, and the very first question that Dave Law asked me was, what would a chemical engineering company do with a mechanical engineer? And I freaked out. I was like, I don't know, actually. I was kind of hoping you would tell me.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was like, well, good answer. And he just started going off on his ideas, and that short conversation turned into a 4-hour interview. And I met everybody in the company basically that was in the building, and it was okay, well, can you start next week? So it was just like boom, boom, boom. It was all that fast.
That's crazy.
I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea what spray foam insulation was. The only construction experience I had was working with my stepdad's framing crew when I was 14. I worked a summer on his framing crew. And so I barely knew what insulation was, and I had no idea what spray foam insulation was.
Right. And
so I started as a what was the position? It was an engineering intern, was technically my first position. And I basically sat at my office with the building codes books for the IRC, the residential code and the commercial code, open at my desk, with phone by my side, computer in the middle, the IRC on one side, the IBC on the other side. Right. And for like a year and a half, my primary job was answering building code questions. And I would get the question, I would look in the book and try to find an answer, and I would go back and answer the question. And it was probably one of the best things that could happen to me, because I know the code sections so well.
Yeah.
Because I worked with them continuously for so long.
You were like the newest version of the very first version of Google.
Yeah.
For building codes.
Right.
Wow. Well, and you know what? That's one of the things when you have to do it old school that way, with a little bit of technology in there, you do get to know that in and out, and you become the expert on that, really.
Right. Right. Well, it was interesting at the time. I mean, we're a small company in, 2004, Demilec was a small company. I think we hadn't even broken 10 million in annual sales in the US at that
Right.
point in time.
Yeah.
And I knew, like, looking around, Dave had, more than 20 years in the industry, or right at 20 years in the industry at that point. A couple of the spray techs that were on the team, like Aaron Goodfellow, had 6-7 years. Scott Croft came along came back to them like a couple years later. He had like 10 years in the business. Jim Upton had like 14 years in the business. I start adding it up, and I'm like, all these people on this team, we have like almost 100 years, if not more than 100 years experience
Yeah.
in this industry, and we aren't capturing information in any way. And so I basically started doing that. The questions would funnel into me from contractors in the field and from our sales reps that were in the field. And I would go track down the answers, because I figured, if my buddy Don Waltz, up in Delaware, who had been in the industry for 20-25 years, if he didn't know the answer, and if he was calling me brand new in the industry to ask me to find this answer, well, we needed to document it somewhere. And so I just started compiling all the answers to all these questions. And after about 6 months, I didn't have to search for 75% of the questions. I already had the answers somewhere, because it was the same questions that would typically be asked over and over. And so within the first year and a half, I became one of the go-to people for internal questions. And it wasn't because I was really good or had a lot of experience. It was just that I started compiling all of the answers into one place, so it was easy to access.
Right. And you and I have talked about this, about kind of, the more information that contractors can have, and as long as it's accurate and the correct information, the better. Because what that does is it helps them, excel at what they do. And then it extends to the customers, and that it's like a downward, whatever you want to call it, a trickle down effect or whatever. But that all flows out into all the places it needs to be.
Right. Yeah. A common discussion that I hear in the industry is open sell versus close sell.
Right.
And I may upset some people, by even bringing this concept up, but some people will say, well, I only spray close sell because open sell is terrible, and close sell is the best product on the market, and it's the only way to go because open sell is terrible. And it's fine to have an opinion that that closed cell foam is better than open cell foam in certain situations. But if you take a narrow-minded point of view and just say closed cell is the only product I'm going to use because open cell is terrible, you're looking at things from a very closed-minded perspective. And the open-minded perspective is open cell foam does this, this, and this. Closed cell foam does this, this, and this. And this is where I should use one product over the other. And in my climate zone, I use closed cell foam because of these things. That's an open-minded approach to that conversation of open cell versus closed cell. And the only way to get there is by taking in the information about both products and actually being aware enough to have that analysis of why you should use one over the other.
Right. And you touched on that too with your climate zone. Everywhere is different. So you could be in one state or another state. There's totally different things that go on in each of those states because of climate. Same as up here in Canada. It depends where you are. There's different, there's different regions and different things. So you have to have that open-minded and be willing to take that information in. And to me, when you have the right information, and you're open-minded to that, you're going to be a deadly weapon.
Right.
Because
Right.
you are filled with, not only can you spray the product, but you've got the backing, you've got the knowledge behind what you're doing. It's not just going in and spraying that job. So
Right.
that is very key.
Yeah,
I
and
think.
this is where building science becomes such a critical function in the spray foam
Yes.
industry. Is not only is it climate zone related, but it's also function of the building related. Like
Right.
insulating a residential structure versus a commercial building versus a pool house versus a grow facility, they all
Right.
have different functions, and the way they operate is going to be different. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how you attack the insulation process, the envelope process, the air sealing package, it's not just a cookie cutter solution. Like spray,
Right.
we may all agree that spray foam is the solution, but what you're actually doing and why you're doing it may not be exactly the same in every situation.
Right. So how long were you at Demilec for?
So I was at Demilec until 2014. So I was there all the way
Oh.
through the first sell when Jacques and Dave sold the
Mm-hmm.
company to Sun Capital.
Mm-hmm.
I was there even post sale. So I stayed on with Sun Capital for about a year
Mm-hmm.
and helped them bring on their new CEO, all the new VPs, like the entire new team that came on with Sun Capital. I was there to help with that transition process. So by that point in time, I had gone from engineering intern to sales rep in the state of Florida, back
Mm-hmm.
to the home office in Texas to start an architectural specification division. I then became director of engineering, and then I became COO at Demilec.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I was second in, I was second to Dave Law. I was his right hand
Mm-hmm.
man at, right there at the end when he sold the company. So he sold the company and retired, and I was the next man in line basically to help bring on all of the new executives that were coming onto the team from Sun Capital. And so I
Mm-hmm.
stayed on board for about a year during that transition process. And when I left, that's when I started Spray Foam Advisor. Was right after I left, right after I left Demilec.
So I guess, and now were you already thinking about starting Spray Foam Advisor before, like a while before, or was it just like, is that that's why you went that way, or?
Nope, I wasn't thinking about it at all. Yeah.
Okay.
just it's just the way things happen. So November of 2014, the executives at Demilec had a big restructuring,
Hmm.
and I think there were 9 or 10 people that were that were let go as part of that restructuring, and
Right.
I was one of those people.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was it was a shock, it was a surprise, it was
Yeah.
unexpected,
Hmm.
and it hit me hard because I had only thought about working for this company and someday being having a VP title at this company.
Right. Yeah.
And it was my life. Like it was, aside from my travel and my investing on the side and my extracurriculars in life, this was
Hmm.
what I lived for, was for work. It was, I thought, I mean, it was fun. It is fun. I love the
Yeah.
industry. It's interesting. I get to do fun and creative stuff, but it was shocking. It was flooring.
Yeah.
I had a lot of emotions at the time. It took me about 2 to 3 weeks to really come to grips with it and get over it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but during that time frame, so kind of leading up to that, what led to Spray Foam Advisor, I had a lot of exposure to personal development and
Oh, okay.
guys like Jim Rohn
Yeah.
and Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and
Yes.
these guys I read books by authors like this, and I saw videos and I saw conferences from these guys, and I really kind of it built up in me this internal path of consistent education and bettering myself for the future. And
Okay.
so as this was kind of going down and I was thinking, what should I do next? What's going to come next?
Yeah.
I thought, well, I look around the industry, and
Hmm.
at the time, the only two consultants in the industry were Roger Morrison and Mason Knowles.
Hmm.
And I didn't see any repository of video knowledge base in the industry. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's knowledge base.
Yeah.
People, Spray Foam Worldwide has knowledge base,
Yes.
but it's, unless you are really connected and really networked with people, the knowledge is very scattered and disconnected, and it's hard to bring it together.
Mm-hmm.
The SPFA has a lot of resources,
Yes.
but the majority of it is all written communication. And I had a vision that video communication and video training would be better, or would
Right.
at least give an opportunity to people who learn in a different way, who prefer video
Right.
as an education method. And I knew it was a big project, and I knew it was going to take a while to like get things together.
Hmm.
But that was my ultimate vision, and I started as a consultant, obviously, because I've got to feed my family and eat too. And
Yeah.
so I needed to
Right.
have revenue. And so I started as a
Yes.
consultant and do jobs primarily for manufacturers and directly for contractors. Early in Spray Foam Advisors history, I was, writing letters and doing job site inspections and helping out with architectural presentations, and basically anything that didn't include spraying the foam.
Hmm.
And that's like, I'm aware of the equipment. I know how the equipment works. I know how to
Right.
take a gun apart and put it back together, but that's not my expertise. I know
Right.
half a dozen guys that are 20 times better at that than me, and I'd be happy to refer any of my clients to these other
Yes.
guys because they're
Right.
just, frankly, they're better than I am
Yeah.
at that stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to sales and marketing, when it comes to building science and building codes, when it comes to presentations, I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of focus my efforts. And so
Hmm.
while I was building my business providing consulting services, I was also building a video platform to provide training and education services to
Right.
the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you think you're going to be staying with a company for forever, and I mean, you were up there, obviously, and to get thrown into a space of that's not the reality anymore. To be inventive like you were, that's commendable, because it's finding, not everybody has, there are certain people that have that insight. They can see things, that missing link, that thing that needs to be filled, and to take that leap and just go, I'm going to be the person to fill that. That all sounds awesome, and when you talk about it, but to actually do it, that's pretty
Yeah.
scary. It's a scary space to be. And it's, when you touched on the personal development side, you had started that before you had taken that leap. So do you think that was partially, like, was that very helpful to you, having
Yes.
that?
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
100%. If I hadn't been exposed to personal development and
Hmm.
this idea of regular improvement of yourself on a regular basis,
Hmm.
um, that I wouldn't even I wouldn't even have thought about it. Like,
Done
it
it.
wouldn't even have been an idea in my head. And like, I
Right.
remember the exact moment where I knew that I was going to start my own business. I was like looking around the industry, and I was like, there's like 10, 12, 14 companies in the industry. I could
Mhm.
possibly have a job with any one of them. I don't know
Yeah.
who's hiring right now, but there's not a lot of people with my skill set in the industry.
Yeah.
So let me do this. I'm going to try to make this happen. And the
Hmm.
worst case scenario is if in a year I fall
Yeah.
completely flat on my face
Hmm.
and I make absolutely zero money, I'll have to go get a job somewhere. But there's
Right.
so many companies in the industry at this point in time that
Hmm.
I'll be able to find a job somewhere. Like I'll be able to get a job in the industry
Yeah.
somewhere.
Right.
Um, but I can take a risk now because, and a lot of it, personally,
Hmm.
I made a lot of good choices on the financial side of my life. And
Right.
so I made a lot of good financial decisions early. So through my 20s, I was saving money, I was investing in the stock market, I was investing in rental properties. I was doing stuff on the side through my 20s
Hmm.
that I just learned along the way, or I stumbled into, or I did by accident. And it put me in a financial position what I was 34 when I when I got my pink slip basically.
Yeah.
And it put me, because of the previous 10 years of good financial decisions,
Hmm.
it put me in a situation where I had income coming in from rental properties. It wasn't
Hmm.
much, but I had income coming
Something
in.
coming in. Yeah.
I had savings
Hmm.
in the bank. So I had an emergency fund, I had savings, and I had money invested in my 401k and in the stock market. And like, worst comes to worst, I had resources that I could
Right.
draw from.
Yeah.
And so I made good financial decisions early, which allowed me to take a risk. I really, in the ideal time frame, because there's no way I could have started a credible business in my 20s with little to no experience. When
Right.
I have the ability to take all the risk,
Hmm.
I needed 10 years to gain experience and knowledge and network in the industry.
Yeah.
And that put me in a position in my 30s to be able to take this big risk. And so far, it's worked out.
Yeah. I think I wanted to touch back on the personal development side for a number of reasons, but the main one is because I really, in these conversations that I've been having with guys that are in the industry and outside of the industry, it is important. It's an important point to bring up that it's okay for men to do personal development.
Yeah.
There
I
is
mean,
that stigma. And
it's okay. It's not just okay.
yes,
In my opinion, it's
it's
required
a
for every
must.
person in life. Like we
Yes.
tend to think of our education as stopping once we finish secondary
Mm-hmm.
school, once we finish high school, once we finish college, once we finish university, once we
Right.
finish trade school, whatever it is. We tend to think that our education stops.
Yeah.
And if you've listened to any old timer, anybody who's in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who's been very successful, one of the key things that they always say is that life is an ongoing learning process.
Yeah.
And if you don't embrace that, if you don't embrace the learning, embrace the education, embrace the development, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be left behind by your
Right.
peers. You're going to be left behind. You're going to be caught by people who are
Mhm.
younger than you, and you're not going to be in a position to compete 5 years down the road if you haven't continuously worked at making yourself better. This
Right.
is, it's not just personal development. Personal development, maybe for viewers that don't know what I'm talking about, this is where you work on yourself. You work on your personal skills. This is communication skills. This is
Yeah.
management skills. This is, what type of a father do I want to be? What type of a husband do I want to be? What type of a brother do I want to be? What type of a person do I want to be in my community? What are my beliefs? Who am I as a person?
Right.
And how do I become a better person? How do I
Mhm.
fulfill my life's desires, whether it's health, wealth, relationships, finances? There's all these categories in life that we have to deal with. You have to
Yeah.
figure out how you're going to attack each of these, and that's finding who you are. And don't think for a second that the person that you were when you were 20 is the same person that you are when you're 30 and the same
Yep.
person when you're 40. And you have to be
Exactly.
willing to grow and change along the way. And it's one of the most difficult things to do, in my opinion.
Oh, yes, it is. I always say, to do that work. I My thing is always talking about healing from within. So it's like doing that personal development, doing those things, and people get that weird vibe about like it's all hippie weird, like we're burning sage and being strange, which that has its place, but but that's not what it is. It's really dealing with those things, that whatever it was, whatever those experiences, whatever, you just, yeah, you've once you start doing that, and it's hard, like you said, you don't want to look at yourself and go, oh, maybe that was because of me, like that
Right,
situation like, ew, I'd rather blame that guy.
right,
Because it's
right. Well,
easier. But to look within and really go deep on that, it's scary and it is hard, but it
yeah.
is
Well,
a must.
and you have two different areas, or at least I tend to kind of categorize development in two different areas. You have personal development, which is about
Yeah.
yourself, and you have
Yeah.
professional development, which is about your skills and your knowledge for
Mhm.
your profession. And
Right.
so obviously Spray Foam Advisor is focused on professional development for the spray foam industry.
Right.
But personal development is almost a must before you can even recognize the value of getting information from other people. You have to,
Mm.
you have to go through some level of personal development. And
Right.
so, one of my mentors that kind of taught me this concept, he said, Robert, there's tens of thousands of books
Yeah.
written by people that came before you, that did stuff before you. Why would you ignore all of their writings and all of their teachings and everything they did and try to figure it out yourself?
Hmm.
They are your shortcut. You can actually go through and read 10, 15 pages a day, spend 10 to 15 minutes a day watching a video,
Yeah.
and that will be your shortcut to avoid all of the mistakes that this person made, because they will
Hmm.
teach you the way. They will teach you about a concept. Personal development, probably one of the easiest for people to grasp, is health and wellness.
Yeah.
Taking care of your body, taking care of yourself.
Hmm.
It's an idea, it's an issue that I had a problem with for a long time. For the
Hmm.
longest time, I just didn't care what I weighed. I didn't care about my physical health. I didn't care about. I was an active guy. I love
Hmm.
sports. I love to be outdoors. I like to play disc golf. I like to do other things, but I didn't care how much I weighed or what my physical body looked like.
Hmm.
And I don't even know exactly what changed, but one day I got into a weight loss competition,
Mm.
and at one point I got up to, so 2013 time frame, I got up to like 268 pounds, and got
Mhm.
into a weight loss competition and lost 30 pounds, got into another weight loss competition, lost another 30 pounds. And the
Yeah.
competitions were necessary for my ego to get out of the way
Yeah.
so that I could focus on losing the weight. But I did it in
Hmm.
a very regimented engineering like way. I didn't make it
Right.
part of my life, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so then after I lost all the weight, it took a couple of years, but I gained about half of it back because
Mm.
I
Hmm.
didn't make it part of who I was. I
Right.
learned these skills in a very specific engineering methodology. If you take in less calories than you burn, you're going to lose weight. Like that was the way I
Yeah.
lost weight in 2013. I tracked all my calories. I worked out, every other day. I burned more calories every week than I consumed, and I lost weight. But I didn't continue that over the long term, and so I started to
Mhm.
gain weight back. And so this year, actually, I got back up to about 240,
Mhm.
and my wife was concerned about her weight, and so
Mhm.
she wanted to start, paying attention to what we're eating and be healthier. And so
Yeah.
we started making better choices, and I've lost now another 30 pounds.
Good for
And
you.
the difference this time
Mhm.
is I didn't do it in a very strict engineering,
In an
food in,
analytical
food
way.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did it based on these are the meals that are going to give us the best opportunity to lose weight over the long term.
Mhm.
So here are we have, 10 staple meals that we eat more often than anything else.
Yep.
These 10 meals are good for us. As long as we are burning calories and walking and actually moving on a daily
Mhm.
basis, we don't have to do anything strenuous.
Yep.
As long as we're doing movement on a regular basis, then these 10 meals will not produce crazy results in our body, and we should be able to lose weight.
Yeah.
And so far, it's worked. And it doesn't mean cutting out chocolate. It doesn't mean cutting out sweets. It doesn't mean ignoring everything. It means
Mm.
those things are acceptable in small quantities, once
Yeah.
or twice a week, as long as we follow these other protocols. Move,
Yeah.
work
Move
out
your
daily,
body.
move
Yeah.
your body daily. And all we're doing is walking every day.
Yep.
And then we're eating primarily protein and vegetables.
Mhm.
And it's pretty simple. But
Yeah.
even though it's simple, it's it's easy to not do,
Oh, for sure it is. You
right?
get lazy and you feel like, let's just not do that today. You know what?
Right.
It's all good. I know. And since I've been walking tons, and since I started it, it wasn't a thing I set out, I'm gonna start walking and this is what I'm gonna do now. I just I love walking. It's just what I do. And anybody that walks with me knows I'm a liar because I'm always like, it's just a couple of blocks, and it ends up being 18 blocks. So nobody trusts me on my, that's just a
Right. Right.
2 blocks is not real. But anyways,
Sure,
it's one
sure.
of those things though that now when I don't do it, I don't feel good. Like I
Oh,
want it,
yeah.
and it clears my headspace. Like it gets me started. That's why I like to do it first thing in the morning before anything else, because it
Sure.
clears my head and I can be more effective in what I'm doing, and I can get more done, and I just feel better. If I
Right.
don't, which I haven't for the last few days just because of certain things have come up, this week has been off for me, and it's because
Right.
I haven't walked as much.
Right.
So yeah, it's just really and people don't think walking is a like what is that? You move your body. That's it. Like go for a walk.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
That's it. Yeah, all we've been doing is focusing on 6 to 10,000 steps a day. That's
Yeah.
it. 6 to 10,000 steps a day,
Hmm.
and as long as we're paying attention to what we're eating, as long as we're
Yeah.
eating reasonable meals, we've been losing weight the entire time. And it took about 2.5 months, and my wife lost 10 pounds, and she
Hmm.
was able to get back into her size 6 jeans, and she was
Hmm.
happy.
Yeah.
And and I don't know what I'm not a big fan of like body mass index scales and like trying to
Right.
figure out what's a cookie, based on your height, what's a cookie cutter weight that everybody that's this height should weigh. I'm not a
Yeah.
big fan of that. But
No.
I actually, for the first time in my life, so I wrestled in high school at 215 pounds. And so I
Mm-hmm.
walked about 220 is what my walking weight was. And I would have to cut weight for every wrestling match.
Hmm.
Right now I'm about 213. I just turned 40 years old, and I weigh less than I did as a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I've never really thought that I could weigh under 200 pounds. I just never, even when I had that huge weight loss
Yeah.
in 2014, I didn't think 200 pounds was reasonable
Hmm.
because it was so difficult. I got down
Right.
to 203, I think.
Yeah.
And it was so difficult to get to 203. I just thought,
Right.
oh, there's no way 200 is, there's just no way I can do it. Well, now for the first time in my life, I think it's possible for me to weigh less than 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And, we'll see. We'll see if I get there. But
I think it has a lot to do with not putting so much emphasis on I'm going to get under 200 pounds.
yeah,
It's just doing exactly what you're doing. It naturally will happen. It's when I
right.
think what happens is you attach that. That's why I hate scales. I'm not a
Hmm.
fan of a scale. I do not step on a scale. Because I don't want to be attached to that number. The minute
Right.
I see that number, I'm like, I don't like that number very much.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
I feel good and I'm, doing my thing where I'm supposed to like being somewhat more healthy than not healthy, I'm okay with that. Like for me, that's okay. There are people that love to have that scale, but I mean, when you, I've had people that in my life that are very attached to a number on a scale, and it's
Yeah.
like that number isn't who you are.
Right.
That number means nothing. Because if you don't feel good, you could go down to under 200 pounds and feel like garbage because maybe
Right.
that's not where you're supposed to be.
Right. And
Or
it's
you could go and,
possible.
like who knows? You're going to be the one that knows, and you're going to know when, you know what, I think I'm good right here.
Well, so I mentioned disc golf earlier, and I'm an avid
Yes.
disc golf player. I
Yeah.
love the game of disc golf. I started playing in 1999 in college. I picked up my first disc golf disc,
Yeah.
and I'm not great. I'm not even good at the game. I'm above average, but
Hmm.
I play with a lot of guys who are way better than me. But I can tell a significant difference in how my body moves playing disc golf,
Right.
even though it's not a sport about movement. It's not a sport where my body, I have to run or I have to jump or I'm just,
Yeah.
it's like golf. I'm standing still making a throwing motion for the most part of a
Yeah.
frisbee, of a disc. I can feel the difference between weighing 215 pounds versus
Yeah.
245 pounds. Like I can feel the
Right.
difference,
Yeah.
and it's kind of wild. um
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to also go back to in when you were talking about you made good decisions financially when you were in your 20s. So
yeah.
is that something that you were taught like from your parents, or is that something you decided, you know what, I want to be like good with my money, so I'm going to learn? And how did that all come to be?
So a combination. So I wasn't really taught that by my parents, but
Hmm.
it was, you know, I grew up in a fairly lower middle class to poor area,
Hmm.
and we didn't always have money, and oftentimes we had no money, and I learned it from my family,
Yeah.
but in the sense that I never wanted to put myself and my family in the situation that I grew up in. And so
Right.
I made it, but I was always very good with money early on. So
Mm.
even as a teenager, I got my first job
Hmm.
at 15, and I always had money. Like I just always, I wasn't a kid that got money and spent it.
Okay.
I always had savings. I always had money set aside.
Mm.
I was able to buy my first car and my second car myself. Actually, my first car, my mom split with me. I put
Yeah.
50%, she put 50%, and bought my
Yeah.
first car. And then my
Hmm.
second car, I got a 1982 Volkswagen, no, 1972 Volkswagen Beetle, and I
Yeah.
bought it for $500.
Yeah.
And I was able to pay for that myself. And I
And
was fairly good with money, even young.
how old were you when you bought that car?
I was 18.
18. Yeah.
Yeah, or yeah,
That's a
17,
big
17, 18.
deal. It's a big
Yeah,
deal to be able to do that when you're 18 years old or
yeah.
17 or however old, you know?
And so, I mean, I spent $500 on a car, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a car payment. And so the only money that I had to have monthly was to pay for insurance and
Right.
gas.
Yeah.
And then that's the car that I drove to college. Like that's the car that I took to college.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite cars of all time.
Yeah.
And I was actually working on my Beetle in the parking lot of my dorm on
Mm-hmm.
university my first year. And this guy comes up, another student that I never met
Mm-hmm.
before. He comes up and he's like, "Oh, you have a Volkswagen Beetle. I have one too." And we start talking, and now we're bonding because we have something in
Mm-hmm.
common. We both have Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah.
And I see him a couple weeks later, and he says, "Oh, hey, are you possibly interested in another? Do you want to buy my Volkswagen Beetle? I'm having some problems with it, and it's just sitting in my grandmother's garage. I'm not able to drive it."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "You might want it as a parts car." And I was like, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'll come take a look at it, sure."
Yeah.
And so I drove out to Fort Worth. I was living in Arlington at the time, drove out to Fort
Mm-hmm.
Worth to go see this car. And he was telling me that he was having brake problems with the car. And so I get out there, and I'm looking at it, and it looks better than mine. Like it looks better than the one that I have that I've been
Yeah.
driving around town. And he was like, "Well, do you want to take it for a test drive?" And in my head, I'm thinking, "Thought you said there was a brake problem." I didn't say anything out loud. And he was like, "Just be careful, the emergency brake doesn't work." So
Oh,
that was
that
the brake
changes it.
problem. That was the
That
brake
changes
problem.
things.
Yeah. And so I hop in the car
Yeah.
and I drive it around, and I'm like, it looks better than my car and it
Mm-hmm.
drives better than my car. What is
Yeah.
going on? And I come back, and he was like, "So are you interested in buying it?" And like we start negotiating, and I'm like, and he ends up agreeing to sell it to me for $300 because it had a brake
Break
problem.
problem.
I pull around to the convenience store
Yeah.
that's around the corner, and in 30 seconds, I fixed the emergency brake. But like
Oh
I fixed
man.
the brake problem in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I actually started driving that car. Like that became my primary driver, and my other car I ended up selling a
Yeah.
couple months later. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
It's
but that
crazy,
was
those things.
so one thing as a teenager, as a young 20 something in college,
Hmm.
I owned a bunch of different cars, but I never spent more than $800 on a car.
Wow.
And so I would go around shopping, and now some of the cars only lasted me 6 months.
Yeah.
But if I spent $300 on a car that lasts me 6 months, that's a
Hmm.
great deal.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of cars that lasted like 18 months, and I spent less than $800 on them. And
Hmm.
so I was able to get through, high school, college, and my early 20s by keeping my vehicle expenses very low.
Right.
And one of the key ways of doing that was by buying cheap cars that
Hmm.
basically were throwaways. That
Yeah.
I just basically just it didn't matter if it broke down. Um, it it could last me 2 months, and it's a better deal than paying a $300 a car payment,
Right.
three hundred
A
dollar a
month.
month
Yeah.
car payment.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of my philosophy early on was I'm not going to have a bunch of expenses. I'm not going to
Mm.
spend a bunch of money on on things like vehicles. That was one of my examples.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to try to keep things very tight.
Hmm.
And I had my fair share of credit card debt from college and student loan debt from college.
Hmm.
But I was able to keep that to a minimum. Some of my friends had 60, 70, $100,000 in student loan debt when they
Right.
graduated, and I had about 30,000. But I had 30,000 in student loan debt from 2 degrees. So
Mm.
6 years, an undergrad in engineering, a master's in business, and $30,000
Wow.
in student loan debt. And so significantly different than a lot of my
Yes.
counterparts
Yeah.
in the industry. And so,
Right.
or in school at the time. And so
Hmm.
that was because I worked part-time jobs. I
Hmm.
was a tutor. I was a substitute teacher. I was a DJ
Mm.
at a teen club.
Yeah.
I um, I mean, I just did. I worked at a drive-in movie theater.
Yeah.
Um, like I just
Did whatever.
yeah, I did whatever I could. I
Yeah.
refereed intramural sports games on campus. I was an office assistant on campus. Like I worked in
Hmm.
the bowling alley that was on campus. I worked in the pool hall that was on campus.
Yeah.
Like I just did stuff. I was always
Hmm.
looking for opportunities to have money coming in so that I could fund and keep my debt low.
Yeah.
And then once I got a full-time job, it was more money than I had ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I was able to pay off debt and to
Hmm.
have the first year and a half, oh, maybe longer than that, even the first probably 3 to 4 years of my professional life, I still operated with this keeping expenses to an absolute minimum. I
Right.
didn't buy a car right away. I I had a roommate still in my apartment.
Hmm.
When it came time to move out of our apartment, I went to a couple of my friends and said, "Hey, I think it would make a lot of sense if one of you guys, they were both older than me, if one of you guys bought
Hmm.
a house and then the other one of us rented the spare rooms from you."
Hmm.
And I basically said, "Hey, I think you should do this," because they were older than me. I thought they were in a better position to do it than me.
Right.
And they said they weren't interested. And I said, "Okay, well, if I buy a house, will you rent the rooms from me?" And they said yes. So that's how I got my first investment property.
Wow.
Like,
I was going to say, so how did you get into the real estate investing? So,
yeah.
wow. That's
And
how
it
you
was an
started.
accident. It was an
Yeah.
accident. Like I did it out of spite of my new landlord. So what happened is the apartment I was living in, it was a
Hmm.
small quadplex that was close to the university campus.
Yeah.
And this is like 2 years, a year and a half after I graduated. I'm still living in this cheap apartment near the
Hmm.
university.
Yeah.
And and a new guy comes in and buys it and raises rent. And I
Hmm.
think he raised rent like $50, and I like lost it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, raising it $50!" I
Yeah.
lost my mind, right? And I was like, "Okay, well, let's do this better." And so I started looking into this idea of buying a house and renting rooms out. And
Hmm.
so I had these buddies that we were all going to move in together. We had looked at moving into a 3-bedroom apartment together, and
Yeah.
I and it was about the same as a mortgage payment. And I was
Hmm.
like, "Well, why don't we just move into a house? I'll buy the house, you guys rent from me." And they were both on board.
Hmm.
And so I had no idea that this term actually has a name in the real estate industry. It was just an idea that I came up with. But
Right.
since then, I've done personal development and professional development related to the real estate industry. And there's actually a term in the industry called house hacking. And so this idea of buying a property and then renting out part of it is actually has a foundation in getting involved in rental properties in the real estate
Hmm.
industry. And
Right.
so I I bought this house in Texas. It was a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,800 square feet. Bought it for $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was 105. And I I got the master suite, and I rented out the other 2 rooms for $500 each,
Yeah.
and the that money covered the mortgage.
Right.
$500, the $1,000 each month that they were paying me covered the mortgage, and
Mm-hmm.
I provided all utilities. So I basically paid for all the utilities and the internet in the house.
Right.
And so it was a super cheap way to live in a house. That's
Yeah.
what I thought in my head. And about a year later, I got an offer to go into sales and move to the state of Florida. And so I called up another one of our buddies and said, "Hey, I'm about to move. Do you want to move in with these other guys and rent the master suite?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yes." And he started paying me $600 a month. And so now I've got $1,600 a month coming in. It
Yeah.
cost me about, 12 to 1300 to operate the place. And now
Yeah.
I'm positive cash flow from like
Right.
right away.
Yeah.
And as long as I was positive cash flow, it just made sense to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I moved out to Florida, and even in Florida, I didn't go and rent a $1,500 apartment or anything like that. I I'm willing to take risks, and I'm willing to be a little crazy and thrifty. I
Mm-hmm.
found I went on like 10 interviews with people who had rooms that they wanted to rent.
Yeah.
And I ended up renting a room from a guy who had done the same thing I did. He had a
Mm-hmm.
house, he had a 4 bedroom house, and
Yeah.
he lived in the master suite, and he rented out the other 3 bedrooms to 3 other guys.
Yeah.
And so I rented a room at his house. And
Mm-hmm.
once again, it was a way to keep expenses down.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's just kind of always been, you know, part of my philosophy is if I can keep expenses down, then I have more money to put away into savings and other opportunities, because you never know when opportunities are going to come along.
Right.
And I've always been interested in the stock market, even when I was young. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just naturally started investing in the stock market, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I
Yeah.
made some money, and I lost some money, and I made some money, and I lost some money. And then I kind of came across, I realized that I really don't know what I'm doing in the stock market. And it's going to
Mm-hmm.
take a lot of study and a lot of time to
Yeah.
keep up with the market and what's happening on a daily and weekly basis. And I think it's too time intensive for me to
Mm.
focus my efforts on that. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to the stock market, I put money away, but I invest mostly in ETFs, exchange traded funds.
Mm-hmm.
And for viewers that may not know what this is, an exchange traded fund is basically it's like a stock. You buy it and sell it like a stock, but it operates similar to a mutual fund. It's going to
Okay.
represent a certain part of the market. So I might
Right.
buy an American tech, an American tech industry ETF. So this ETF is supposed to mirror the tech industry. So whatever the tech industry is
Okay.
doing, it's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
mirror that. I might
Right.
buy a foreign oil ETF, and this foreign oil ETF is supposed to mirror the foreign oil markets.
Mm.
Um, and so that's the idea behind an ETF. And so I
Right.
just try to pick certain markets that I want to invest in, and I try to find an
Mm-hmm.
ETF. If I want to invest in gold, I can go buy an ETF that is going to mirror the movement of gold.
Got
And
it.
so that's kind of what I do on the stock side of things, and that keeps
Yeah.
my research and my involvement to a minimum on that side of
Mm-hmm.
things, so that I have more time for Spray Foam Advisor. And
Yeah.
my other investing passion is real estate. And so that property led to another property,
Mm-hmm.
which led to another property, which led to another property.
Yeah.
And so that I bought that first one in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and 2020, I just bought another one at the end of 2019. And
Yeah.
so now we have 6 properties in the past 15 years. And really, that first one, it took me 6 years to buy my second one.
Yeah.
And I actually sold that first one to buy the second one. And so really I would say my real estate investing career began around 2011 when I bought my second house, my first true rental property that I never lived in. And since 2011, we now have 6 properties in our portfolio. And
Right.
so I use property managers to run those properties. And
Okay. Because I think sometimes people think, how do you do that? Like how are you supposed to keep track of a but when you're using a property manager, very smart, because
yeah,
it's like anything. You have to have people. You can't do it all by yourself. There
right,
needs to be people that do things. And like you said, you touched on that earlier. There's things you can do, but you know what? There's somebody that can do it better than you. So let
right,
them do that. And that's the
right.
key, I think. It's knowing what time management and having those people in place. And that's how it's successful.
Yeah. And so what I've learned in the real estate side of things actually mirrors what a lot of businesses, or something a lot of businesses can learn from. The idea is, so I could manage all of the properties myself because
Yeah.
I only have 6, right? I only have 6. It's not too many. I could manage them. And so what would that look like? That would look like I have to make sure that the rent's collected every month. I have to file eviction notices if the rent doesn't get paid. I
Right.
have to make the harassing phone calls when rent doesn't get paid. I have to either go over myself or send somebody over to fix toilets, to fix the stove, to fix the dishwasher, to fix whatever problem, right? Whatever
Yeah.
problem they're having, I either have to do it myself or send somebody over there to do it.
Yeah.
And the issue is, I don't want to get the call at 2 in the morning that says my air conditioner's broke. I
Right.
don't want them to wake me up. I'm probably not going to wake up. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
probably not going
Yeah.
to answer that call. And so for 10% a month, I pay a management company. They get to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
They get to be the person that files eviction notices. They get to be the hound that collects rent, because
Right.
they only get paid if they collect rent. If they don't collect
Right.
rent, they don't get paid.
They don't get paid.
And so they get to be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the owner. I don't even know who's living in most of my properties. And that may
Right.
sound bad, but that's because the manager
That's
has the
their job.
relationship. That's right.
Yes.
It's not my place. I don't need to be that guy. And
Right.
and the reason this is important, because if I was the guy, if I managed all of the properties, then ultimately I would have another job, right?
Yes.
It would be another job for me, and it's not enough, it's not worth my time on that other job to be doing
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right.
And so the way this relates to other businesses, if you are an owner operator, and once you get to some point, you are going, or you should want to have a choice. Do I work in my business, or do I not work in my business?
Right.
That should, as an owner, that should be your choice, whether or not you employ yourself in the business or you don't employ yourself. And the majority of owner operators, like in our industry, for example, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a choice. If
Yeah.
they don't work in the business fails immediately.
Right.
And the way you overcome that is you have to build systems and processes. You need systems and processes for your marketing, for your
Yeah.
sales, for your operations, and for management.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then you can start at some point, when the company's big enough, when you have enough enough revenue to hire enough
Mm-hmm.
people, when you have enough people to fill these roles, you can create an organization that allows you to take a 3-week vacation, and you
Yeah.
don't have to be there every day. to run the business. Because as an
Right.
owner, you are entitled to the profits of the business, whether you work in the business on a daily basis or not.
Or not. Yeah.
And a lot of guys don't get that. They don't get that part of the business.
Hmm.
If you are running a business and you make the same amount of money that you would make if you went and took a sales job at another spray foam company, at
Right.
another contractor company, or if you went to be a lead sprayer at another contracting company, you are doing yourself a disservice. And that's okay. It may mean that you have to operate lean in the
Hmm.
first 2 or 3 or 4 years until you hit your stride and you have built up enough client, your network, your client network, you built up enough contracts, you built up enough opportunity in your area, whatever the case may be. The early years may be lean, but by the
Yeah.
time you hit year 5, 6, 7, 8, you should be making a salary from working in the business
Hmm.
and profits from owning the business. They are
Right.
not the same thing. They are two separate streams of income,
Hmm.
and they should be set up that way. Otherwise, oftentimes you won't there won't be enough money at the end of the year to pay those separate streams of income because you have taxes and insurances and all of these things, employment taxes that come up, that if
Hmm.
you don't plan for it throughout the year, you're not going to be in a position to make it all happen.
Right. And we see that conversation a lot in different groups, whether it's worldwide or outside of
Yeah,
worldwide, but you see that conversation a lot. And guys and gals jumping into business thinking, okay, because they've been told or however that comes to them, they're going to make all this money.
right,
And I think a lot of things that get missed are the things that you touched on is insurance, taxes. Those are things people, they don't factor that into when they're going, okay, like, there's business expenses. We hear about the breakdowns and the this is and that, like it's an expensive endeavor.
right,
So if you don't have somebody helping you with that,
right.
that is a very, that can be a very devastating thing.
I think the two biggest downfalls for not just spray foam, but contracting businesses in
Yes.
general, the two biggest downfalls, I think, are not finding enough customers. So,
Right.
not figuring out how to do marketing well
Mm-hmm.
enough to find customers, and then sales well enough to convert those customers, to convert those prospects, those leads into customers. So that
Right.
combination of sales and marketing, that's one.
Yeah.
And then number two is financial management.
Yes.
Not knowing how to manage your finances appropriately so that you have enough money to pay your labor, to pay your materials, to pay yourself, to pay your
Mm-hmm.
equipment, to pay your taxes, to pay your insurances. Like there's a lot of expenses. And if you don't
Right.
accrue these expenses throughout the year, oftentimes it's a headache to keep up with
Yeah.
it.
Oh, for sure. And I think if anything I've gotten out of this conversation is this is what keeps coming back to me is it's slow and steady wins the race.
Right.
People want to jump in and be like, it's going to happen right now and we're going to make all this money or whatever. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether that's personal development, whether that's business, whether that's whatever. People want it instantly. And it takes time and it's going to be hard no matter what.
Right.
But if you get the education behind you, the research, I think you mentioned having a mentor. I think it's important for people to have mentors. And I don't know if people really understand how important that is,
Right.
because
I agree.
it's not a weakness to have a mentor. A mentor is somebody that, whether that person, I mean, it's hopefully that person, but even they can be people that you don't even know,
Right.
and you follow
Um,
them and you learn from them.
having a mentor is a sign of strength because it
Yes.
shows that you are willing to look for help,
Hmm.
that you're willing to listen to outside opinions and take outside advice.
Yeah.
And if it's the right person for you, they hold you accountable. Like the best mentors hold you accountable for what you say you're going to do and who you want to be.
Right.
And so, yeah, no,
Yes.
having a mentor is a sign of strength.
How did you find your mentor? You mentioned you had
So,
a mentor.
yeah, I mean, I've had several mentors
Hmm.
throughout, throughout my career, even
Hmm.
early. And a mentor can be somebody. It doesn't have to be a formal relationship. Even it can
Yeah.
be as simple as um, I consider Jim Rohn one of my mentors, and I've
Yes.
never met him before, but
Yeah.
I've listened to probably 50 hours worth of his audiobooks and his videos.
Right.
And he has a saying. He says that growing and personal development
Hmm.
is a matter of taking consistent steps on a daily basis, doing small things that are easy to do, but they are also easy not to do.
Hmm.
And that's the distinction. The distinction is the fact that it's small, simple things on a daily basis. So consistency and simplicity on a daily basis. They're
Yeah.
easy to do and easy not to do.
Hmm.
You have to make the choice to do them on a regular basis. That will
Yeah.
consistently make you better over time.
Hmm.
And I mean, obviously, Dave Law is one of my mentors.
Yeah.
In a more formal method because he was my boss. I worked for him for
Hmm.
10 years. I've had a couple of lawyers that I've interacted with in the past who I really trusted and thought were very successful
Hmm.
that I had mentor relationships with that were formal that I asked for help.
Right.
Locally, I like to network. I like to meet people. And
Yeah.
so I don't I don't call like locally, I have a networking group that I go to.
Hmm.
And I'm the youngest person in this networking group by probably 30 years.
Right.
Like everybody in the group is almost double my age.
Yes.
And there's three guys that are there every week and they don't even realize it, but they're my mentors.
Right.
Like I look up to them. I learn from them every week. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from and their thought process and how they're attacking problems
Hmm.
just by having conversations with them at breakfast on a Tuesday morning.
Right.
um, but I had to go out and find that networking group. I had to look for um, opportunities in my local area to have that
Right.
personal face-to-face contact with
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
So mentors can be anywhere. They don't have to know that they are your mentor. They just have to be somebody that you trust and respect and that you are
Yeah.
willing to learn from. And if
Right.
you want a deeper relationship, if you want a true mentor mentee relationship, then you can ask for help. Then you go and tell them, hey, this is
Yes.
this is where I'm at. I'm looking for help on this. Who do you know that might be able to help me? Would you consider helping me? Like that type of an approach. And
Yeah.
every time I've done that, the people are like, whoa, like you want my help?
It's a
People have
shocking
been
thing, right? Like,
shocked.
what? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's you hit the nail on the head. You asked for help.
yeah,
Now that is a huge thing that, and we've got a number of people in, uh, we'll use worldwide because that's the common thread for everybody,
sure.
is so many people. It's the one thing that I love so much about that group is the fact that it has somewhat gotten rid of that whole, I can't ask you that because you're my competitor. and
Right.
I hate you. I don't even know you, but
Yeah.
I hate you. And I'm going to just like whip you in business, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of, it's not totally gone, but it's
Right.
really changed the face of people, especially guys, reaching out and going, dude, can you help me with this? Like, I
Yeah.
don't, or like posting and asking a question
Yeah.
is the bravest thing, because that can go sideways very easily.
Right.
But that
Right.
group has kind of, in most cases, I'm not going to say all, but most cases, people, it's become that place where you can ask those questions. And I like to say, for the most part, you get, solid,
Yeah.
good support. And it's not a bad thing to ask for help.
No, no. Once
And
again, it's a sign of strength. Like the
yes,
fact that you are willing to ask for help and listen to other people. And the reality is, you may not agree with other people's opinions, but
right.
if you're open enough to ask for advice, to ask for help,
Yeah.
you can then make your decision after you get feedback. And maybe you
Yes.
decide to do it the way you were going to do it in the first place, but
Yeah.
it gives you more information, and that increased amount of information allows you to make better decisions.
100%. And I know behind the scenes, because I've had conversations with people who've been on with doing lives with me about it, and it ranges from whether it's business or personal or whatever it is. The amount of behind the scenes reaching out is incredible, because these conversations reach that person who's not going to like post and go, oh,
Right.
can you help me? Because they're either they're nervous, they're scared, whatever the thing is, they don't want to put
Right.
themselves out there. It's now opened that door for them to go, you know what, like that thing that Robert was talking about, I'm going to actually send him a message now,
Yeah.
because they've gotten to know you like through this conversation a little bit more. And I think
Sure.
it gives people that comfort of, it eases that kind of scary, like they're going to think I'm a lunatic, or they're going to think I'm so dumb, or whatever that we say those things. But it's
Well,
really broken those barriers, I think.
well, the reality is everybody started at zero at some point.
Yes.
I started at zero at some point in the industry.
Yeah.
And if you started a month ago, you are actually an expert compared to the person that started today.
Right.
So if you started a month ago, you can actually teach the person that started today
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
everybody has the opportunity to be a leader and a teacher,
Yes.
and everybody has somebody they can reach up to. Everybody in the industry has somebody they can learn from. I
Yes.
learn from guys all of the time that have not been in the industry as long as me.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm willing and open to the fact that I don't know it all. Yes, I'm
Yes.
pretty good at some stuff. I know where my superpower isn't that I know everything. My superpower is that I'm really, really good at collecting information, sorting
Mhm.
it out, and putting it into small, bite-sized, understandable chunks.
Right.
If anybody watches my YouTube videos, or watches, if they get my weekly video tips,
Yeah.
that's what I'm really good at. I'm really good at taking complex subjects, breaking it down, and trying to make, a 4 to 7 minute video that's understandable. Like,
Right.
that's what I'm really good at. It's not that I know everything, because I don't.
Hmm.
It's that I figured out what my superpower is, and I'm trying to maximize it.
Yeah. And I think you said it earlier too. Everybody learns differently. So written, like stuff written down and you got to read and try to understand it, versus video and it's your live or however you do it.
Yeah.
There are different people pick up, everybody learns differently. Some people love that written, like let's read, and some people don't want to take that time, but a video, they get what they
Right.
need out of that video. So
So
it's key.
it's important that from an education perspective, to
Hmm.
recognize that all of these learning types are out there, And so
Yes.
in my largest course that I've created, that's my building
Mhm.
science for the spray foam professional course.
Yep.
In that course, it's 12 or 10 modules with like 45 to 50 videos.
Yep.
Each of the videos is text on screen with a voiceover.
Yes.
So people that prefer auditory learning have the voiceover. People
Yep.
that prefer reading have text on screen. And then I also have a workbook that goes with each video that
Mhm.
they can download, print out, and it's a fill in the blank workbook. So someone that
Right.
that learns by writing, they can actually follow along with the video and then fill in
Mhm.
the blanks. And now they
Yeah.
have a study guide, they have a handbook on
Yeah.
this topic. And I've gotten feedback from multiple people that because one form or the other was available to them, that
Yeah.
it helped them immensely. And the idea for the workbook wasn't even my idea. It was one of my students. It was one of
Yeah.
my customers that bought the program. He was going through the program and he said, "Hey, Robert, hey, I hate to be a pest, but my preferred, or like my best learning method is writing. I
Yeah.
learn best when I write something down. So what do you think about making a fill in the blank style workbook?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh man, that's a great idea. I'm going to
Yeah.
do that. That's fantastic."
Yeah. It's also, I think too, it tends to be in the trades industry in specifically, there is a stigma attached to when it comes to education. People don't think they get, I think there's a bit of an intimidation thing where they don't know if they're, I don't even like to say this word. I don't even like to say this, but it's this, I don't think I'm smart enough to take this course. I'm not
Right.
able to learn. Because who knows whatever happened in school,
Sure.
like there's all those things. And so I think it's important that people know, you know what? It's not how it was when you were in school. You can reach out, you can learn. And I
Right.
think the more building science, I've talked to Shauna Henderson about this and had her on because that's her field as well as building science. And we've talked about that where it's like that is the thing that people in this industry need probably the most.
Sure.
And that's where it needs to get put out there that it doesn't matter what level you're at.
Right.
Take the course. You can do
Right.
it.
Right.
People will help you. It's not just, okay, here it is, and you're like, it's over, like you're gonna fail. Like
And the
it's not set up like that.
and the reality is that because people come in from different backgrounds and different levels of
Yeah,
experience, it may take some people longer.
of
But
course.
when you're learning anything, the process is simple. It's repetition and use,
Hmm.
repetition and use, exposure, repetition and use, exposure, repetition and use. And
Yeah,
so you have to be, if you don't know what air buoyancy is, then you're never going to know what it is if you're never exposed to it.
right.
You have to be exposed to it. You have to try to figure out how it applies to the real world. And then you
Hmm.
have to go back and be exposed to it again.
Right.
So this is what I refer to. And once again, this is something that comes from one of my mentors, the difference of activity knowledge versus learned knowledge. So you get
Hmm.
learned knowledge in an education setting, in a classroom setting, or a video training, or when you're exposed to a new concept, that's learned knowledge. Someone's trying
Yes.
to teach you a concept. Well,
Right.
taking that concept and then applying it to a real world situation is activity knowledge.
Yeah.
That is actually how we learn. Like,
Hmm.
you would never learn how to tie your shoes if I said, "Carla, you knot them, you loop them, and you pull the bow tie through. You
Yeah.
knot them, you loop them, you pull the bow tie through. Now do this with your hands. Now
Yeah.
don't don't ever touch a shoe. You never
Right.
get to touch a shoelace."
Yeah.
No, that's not how we learn as people, as humans. You have to be
Hmm.
exposed to an idea, and then you have to use that activity in
Yeah.
real life And then you have to be exposed to it again. And then you have to use it again. And you
Right.
have this repetitive cycle called spaced repetition that helps to implant that idea in your head so that whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, I remember this because not only did I learn it, but I also used it these multiple times. And
Right.
all of a sudden, it's second nature, like a 5-year-old tying a shoe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it takes time. And for some
Hmm.
people, that amount of time is longer than others. But it's not because of their mental capacity, it's
Hmm.
because of their previous life experiences.
Right. Yeah. It's key. And it's intimidating to take courses and stuff when you've been out of that realm for any length of time too.
Right.
So when people do sign up for your courses, are do you have people that is it you that they go to, or do you have like people that, how does that work so that people
Yeah.
can understand a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, first and foremost, at sprayfoamadvisor.com,
Hmm.
a user can go sign up and create a free account. And I've
Okay.
got probably 50 to 60 videos that are absolutely free.
Hmm.
That these are videos, there's a couple of training programs I've created that are
Yeah.
absolutely free. Um, the past 5 years at SPFA,
Hmm.
I've recorded multiple sessions of the breakout
Oh, okay.
sessions.
Yeah.
So there's probably 20, 30, like 30 to 40 hours worth of SPFA breakout sessions
Nice.
on my website. That's all free,
Yeah. Right.
from all different types of topics. When someone wants to buy a program, there's a couple of options. The most popular option right now, I started a mastermind group. And the mastermind group, we have 2 webinars a month where
Hmm.
everybody dials into a call. I lead the call and we talk about challenges and problems and obstacles and issues.
Hmm.
And and we act as a board of directors for each other. And so it
Oh,
might
okay.
be I'll have manufacturers involved. I have contractors involved. I have suppliers involved. I have distributors involved. Different people from different parts of the industry get on the call, talk
Hmm.
about their issues, talk about their challenges, talk about what topic of the day is, and try to help each other get
Hmm.
better. And that's kind of the focus.
Right.
And when they sign up for that mastermind group, we have a private Facebook page, so
Hmm.
they'll have access to a private Facebook page where they can communicate with the same people from the webinars
Yep.
um, throughout the month, and then we get together twice a month on webinar, and then they also get access to all of my video training programs. So
Okay.
I think I have right now we're up to 6 video training programs. SPF Assistant, SPF Installer, SPF Master Installer, all based on the SPFA learning objectives and that curriculum.
Hmm.
And then I have the Building Science course, the
Yep.
Building Codes course, and unfortunately at this point it's only for the USA. I
Right.
don't, I'm not good enough yet to have Canada included in there, but I'm
Right.
working on it. I'm
Good,
working on it.
good.
And
Don't
then
forget about us up here.
yeah, and then I have one more course in there, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Hmm.
But they get access to all of those training programs um, as being once they're part of the mastermind group. And
Right.
so, if anybody's interested in the mastermind group, you can shoot me an email, robert@sprayfoamadvisor.com, and I'm happy to talk to you in more detail about the mastermind group. Um, I right now you're not going to find it on my website. I had enrollment open back in April,
Hmm.
March or April timeframe, and I closed enrollment for the first group that came through. And
Yeah.
I will be launching another enrollment period here this year. I don't know exactly when I'm going to do it,
Right.
um, but if, based on this this video, if somebody's interested in learning more about the webinar, about the mastermind program, shoot me an email, robert@sprayfoamadvisor.com, and I'll be happy to talk to you in more detail about how that works. It's basically a monthly fee. It's $99 per month, is what the discounted rate is. When I was selling it, it was listed on my website at $150 a month, but I've been offering a discount code this year to sign up for $99 a month, and it's the biggest value I see is actually the mastermind group. If you imagine a small focused, if you took Spray Foam Worldwide and broke it down to a small focus group of like 8 to 15 people that could actually talk to each other and communicate with each other on a regular basis, and give feedback and give tips and give tricks and just help each other get better, and they come from a cross section of the industry, that's really what I've created.
And I think that's a pretty great, that's a good price point for the amount of value you're going to get back on that. Holy cow.
I think so.
Yeah, that's definitely awesome. All right, we've been on here for a long time. I just looked at the time, I'm like, what? But we could be on here all day, and there's been a number of questions. Oh, hang on here. Wayne Hawk is asking, do you think the US is headed towards a Canadian style certification QC program?
That's interesting. Not in the near future. I don't think. If something like that happens, it's going to take, I think, more than 5 years for that to go into effect. And I say that because, you think about the players in the industry that are what the manufacturers, for example, are trying to do with their own training programs and their own guidance and their own management of contractor education in the industry. And they're doing everything they can, more or less, to not have that type of regulation go in place in the US. And ultimately, from a free enterprise standpoint, that's really what we want. I mean, we don't want extra government regulation to impede progress and growth of this type of an industry, at least from a free enterprise standpoint. If that's what your beliefs are, right? This idea of it correlates closely with an idea of competition, and something I learned very early on is that competition is a good thing. You want competition because either that competitor is going to be a good competitor, which means they're going to challenge you to get better. You're going to challenge them to get better, and rising tides float all boats. Or they're going to be a bad competitor. And a bad competitor, guess what? They make you look really good. And
sure do.
If you are a good competitor competing with bad competitors, it may take time, but you're going to win every single time. The bad competitor will have no staying power. They won't be able to hang around. And when I say bad competitor, I don't mean they made one mistake and now they're a bad competitor. We're all allowed to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Somebody that makes a mistake once, that doesn't make them a bad competitor. How they attack that mistake and how they resolve that mistake typically is what defines whether they're a bad or good competitor.
Right. And I think generally speaking, that's another thing that you see all the time is like the pricing and the lowballing and all of that. And I think at the end of the day, the ones who are doing stuff in a not ethical manner and being the bad competitor, they aren't going to be around. They're going to eventually they'll be gone. Well, some may hang on, but I don't know.
The reason that they're able to lowball prices, I say able, the reason that they do lowball prices and and give out these ridiculous bids is they don't understand job costing. They don't
Right.
understand the financial management side of the business. They don't understand
Yes.
that they should be accruing monies for every job that their rig goes on as an equipment expense. Every job that they do has an equipment expense, or an accountant might call it equipment depreciation.
Yes.
It has some level of impact. And if a spray foam rig, if it's $100,000 rig over a 5-year time frame, you should be accumulating $20,000 a year just for the use of your spray foam equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's doing that. I should say
Right.
very few people are actually
Yeah.
doing that. Very few
Mhm.
people are using that type of a technique to take care of good financial money management in the business.
Mm-hmm. It's something that I think is needed so badly in industry is basic business 101 courses, because people have and it's not to any fault really of their own. It's just they don't know. So they're flying
Right,
by the seat of their pants. So they're doing what they think is right and they can't figure it out. And then people get frustrated and then they quit.
right,
But if you have people that can lead that and teach you, and you're willing to, again, it's all about being willing to learn, being
right,
open-minded to learn.
right.
It's going to strengthen the industry as a whole, because
That's
as
right.
everybody becomes a better business person, and it should be not just the business owners learning that, it should be everybody.
Right.
Because if you understand how a business works and how it's run, those employees that are like, oh, you're the owner, so you should pay me more money, blah, blah. But if they
Yeah,
understood the actual cost of operating that business and
right,
see the whole picture, it becomes a very different mentality.
right. Yeah, I mean,
So
the businesses are in businesses are simple.
mhm,
They are a compilation of decisions made every day.
yeah.
That's it. Now, do you want your team, your personnel, making decisions with more information or less? Hopefully, you want them making decisions with more information.
Yes.
Training and education is more information. When
Yes.
they know more about different aspects of the business, when they know more about how businesses should operate, when they have fundamentals, business 101, when they have building codes, when they have building science, when they
Yeah.
have a checklist of spray foam installer steps. This is
Hmm.
all more information that should make the business operate more efficiently and more effectively over the long term. It's just a
Invest
compilation of decisions.
invest in your people.
That's right.
They're worth the if they're there to do what they're supposed to do and work, and they're not just going to be gone in a week. If they are that person who you have on your team, invest in your people.
And sometimes it's more than just investing in your people. Sometimes investing in your people is number one and is important. But
Mhm.
combined with that, you have to have good systems and processes that
Yes, in
tell
place.
them what to do and
Yeah.
how you want it done, so that they can do it when you're not there. So that you're not the
Right.
bottleneck, so that you're not
Yes.
holding the company back, so that you're not creating internal challenges that are unnecessary.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And that's really what you want, is let that business shine and grow and go. Like, you don't need to, like you said earlier, you don't need to be in the business. You can have your people, once you're ready, they run it.
And you may
They
want to be in the business. Hey, some of
Right.
us are crazy. Some of us are crazy and actually want to be in the day-to-day
Yes.
operations side
Yeah.
of things, right? Some of us love sales so much we want to do that. Some of us
Yeah.
love operations so much we want to be pulling the trigger and spraying foam.
Right. Yeah.
But you should have your option. You should be able to choose if that's what you want to do.
Well, and things happen, like people get injured, like
Right.
there's a number that you get sick, whatever it
Sure.
is. If you have those systems in place, you have invested in your people, you go down for could be any number of reasons, your business is still going to
Your
go.
business is sunk. Yeah, if you don't have
Yeah.
systems in place, if your people are not properly trained and you go down, so
Yeah.
does your business, so does your paycheck, so does
Right.
all of your revenue.
Yes.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you believe the US suppliers are going to convert fully to HFOs regardless of climate agreements?
Regardless of climate agreements, no.
Yeah.
As long as they are allowed to sell 245FA products, I believe they will continue to sell 245FA products. A large portion of that is that they have hundreds of thousands of dollars in testing and documentation on products that were developed, now what, 15 years ago in some cases, that they're not just going to discard if they don't have to. The
Right.
only way that 245FA products are going to be discontinued and move out of the market is if it becomes mandated by environment regulations.
Okay. there's a number of comments in the comment section, so we'll go back after and
Sure.
you can answer them. But I guess we will wrap it up because it's nearly 2 hours we've been on here. It's been an awesome conversation. I have to say thank you for reaching out, because I really did drop the ball on getting back to you, and I was like,
That's okay.
oh my God, like, what did I do? Why didn't I respond? But I really appreciate you reaching out again, and we got this to happen. I know you and I are going to be doing other things related to the
Definitely.
industry. We're going to do some collaborating for sure. We're going to have some great conversations and see what we can do together. So
Awesome.
all right. And thank you to everybody who joined in. We've still got a number of people on here watching, so that's awesome. And you guys keep coming back, and that's what makes this all worthwhile as well. So Robert, thank you so much. And we'll make sure in the comments, we'll post the links to wherever they can get a hold of you and to your website and courses and everything. So
yeah, definitely. If anybody's still watching, Robert at sprayfoamadvisor.com. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me, via email. And then that free resource I mentioned earlier is a video email course that you can sign up for at www.spfwebinar.com, and you'll automatically get a series of emails with different videos in there. It's just a little free video email course I put together.
right. And next time we chat, when you come back, we're going to have to talk about poker. We didn't talk about poker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We'll have to get into that.
Right on. Right
all
on.
right, you guys. Thank you again, Robert. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And we will catch you all next time.
Thanks, Carla.
Bye for
Take
now.
care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.